So hello, here I am on the balcony on holiday and I'm just sneaking a little video in while everyone's gone for a siesta. So here I am in Malta. I might show you the view. I hope you find this video on descriptive writing and how to punctuate it really useful. Hello, today I'm looking at a question from Nazhat Iqbal, and he's asked a brilliant one here. I've tried to punctuate this sentence in many ways. Nothing seems to look and feel right. So I'm going to take you through on for the ride. Here we go. And what Nazhat said was, I want the reader to feel the speed by getting out of breath when they read it. So hopefully you've got a sense of that. The sentence that he's written and show you how to punctuate it. It's a genius bit of description, an extended metaphor that's really going to help improve your description. Waves gathered in rows, stampeding towards the land, gathering speed as they rushed and raced, building height as they grew uncontrollably to impossible sizes, unfurling their crests as if lifting their heads, revealing their true identity. They were the great stallions of the sea, now fully fledged. They came grunting and galloping, snorting and cavorting, hissing and spitting as they charged at the rocks. So hopefully you've got a sense of the great power of this writing. Let's first look at the punctuation. So in bold, I've put the main clause. And now, if you don't know what a main clause is, it's the sentence that makes sense on its own, and it has a verb in it. In this case, gathered. Then here, they were great stallions of the sea. It's the verb to be, were, and that makes sense on its own. And here, even shorter, they came, and the verb is came, and it makes sense on its own. So what Nazhat's doing here is putting the main clause at the beginning of each sentence, as you can see, and then adding detail as he goes. So this is how you punctuate it. At the end of a sentence, you always consider the full stop first. And then if what you're adding doesn't make sense on its own, you use the comma. So it makes sense up to here. Waves gathered in rows, stampeding towards the land. Could have a full stop. But the next bit doesn't make sense on its own, and so we extend it with a comma. It makes sense up to there. We could have a full stop. But the next section, building height as they grew uncontrollably to impossible sizes, doesn't make sense on its own, so it's a full stop. And so on, and you can see unfurling their crests doesn't make sense on its own. As if lifting their heads doesn't make sense on its own. Revealing their true identity doesn't make sense on its own. Okay, so all those bits are delineated with a comma. I could have had a comma here, but the dash here reveals the final part of the sentence. Because we've had such a massive list of clauses, it's just a really good way to finish the sentence. You could use a comma if you wished. Now, they were the great stallions of the sea does make sense on its own. So this could not be a comma. It has to be the full stop. And then, as you can see, now fully fledged doesn't make sense on its own. And so we had to have the comma there. Right, you're probably wondering about this colon here. You've probably been taught it's to introduce a list. And you can see this as a great list, but actually it's a more sophisticated use of the colon. It is to introduce an explanation. So this is explaining what the great stallions of the sea are, what they're doing, how the waves are like great stallions. They're grunting, galloping, snorting, cavorting, hissing and spitting, and they're charging at the rocks. So hopefully you can see why it's punctuated as it is. Let's delve a little deeper into Nazhat's great skill as a writer here. So you've picked up that he's describing waves, but all the way through he's describing them as stallions. And in green, you can see how I've highlighted each verb which is true of waves and also true of stallions. Now that's super important. The waves have to fit both parts of the metaphor. The thing that you're describing and the thing that you're comparing it to. So stampeding, rushed, raced, unfurling, really powerful action-packed verbs that give you a real picture. Grunting and galloping, snorting and cavorting. Again, really powerful actions. Now in yellow here, I've highlighted a slight weakness, or if you like, an element of cheating in his writing. So these are brilliant verbs, but they describe much better the waves than the stallions. So hissing and spitting, much more wave-like than stallion-like. He gets away with it because it's part of this brilliant pairing of verbs here, pairing of verbs there, and a pairing here. So he's got a pattern of 3 here. And he's also going to get away with it because of the sound it produces, which I'll give you later. And then the final bit that really rounds this off is he's finished with a final verb which is perfectly fitted to the stallions and the waves. Brilliant, brilliant way to extend your metaphor. Now, if we jump into the final slide, you can see how he's now focusing on sound. Stallions of the sea, the sibilance there, really brings the sound of the waves to life. Fully fledged, you get this, the alliteration of the F's here, remind us of the sea building up power, and then the power comes with the next bit of alliteration, grunting, galloping. We can feel the force increasing as well as the speed, and the same with snorting and cavorting. And you've probably noticed that he's now started to rhyme, orting and orting, and then picks up that image of the rhyme in hissing and spitting. And you can see how necessary his sound is to this sense of speed and drama that he was trying to create in his sentence. So let's test you now on what you can remember. So we had sibilance. Hopefully you can remember what that was. I gave you some punctuation which revealed an explanation. Hopefully you can remember that. We had the rule or pattern of 3. We also had rhyme involved in this, and connected to rhyme was the alliteration. I'm writing this with my finger. Sorry if this is a bit of a mess. And you also needed to remember what a main clause was, and crucially what word needed to be in that. It needed to be a verb, and you also learnt about what a powerful verb looks like and how that gives you a real sense of what the action is. And then finally, you should have picked up what makes an extended metaphor. And the crucial bit about that was that your description had to fit both parts, what you were describing and what you were comparing it to. I put an exclamation mark there because that is a skill of sophisticated writing. So if you have some extended metaphors of your own, why don't you post them below down here, because they won't fit in my post box. I'm glad you knew what that was, not really a squashed Dalek. Anyway, thank you very much. Don't forget to subscribe. So here we are, there are the rooftops. Let's pan across now. That's where the Second World War harbour was that got bombed. And there's one of the great domed churches that are all over this island. And you can see the hills, like the streets of San Francisco, that go up and down. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the instruction even more than my little tourist snaps.